Now, just a day to go for the final vote. Here is what the final poll trends look like. Let's take a look. As per the Politico's poll of polls, Macron has 55% chances of winning the election, with Le Pen's chances left at around 45%. The projection for the 2022 polls is different from those in the 2017 presidential elections, where the centrist Macron secured 66.1% of the votes against the National Rally's Le Pen, who got 33.9% of the votes. Throughout the campaign, Macron has maintained a lead over Le Pen, but the difference has been significantly smaller than that observed in the 2017 race. For the second runoff that takes place on Sunday, among the biggest deciding factors is how the supporters of the veteran left-winger Jean-Luc Mélenchon will vote. In the first runoff, Mélenchon secured a surprising third place with near 22% of the votes. Both candidates have been working hard to woo that far-left base. Polls suggest that more Mélenchon voters are now heeding his appeal not to vote for Le Pen and will either vote for Macron or stay at home. And this, of course, brings us to another issue, voter abstention. Analysts say that abstention rates could reach 26 to 28% in these polls, with reluctant left-wingers needing to back the president for him to be sure of a victory. Marshal Foucault, the director of the Sevipov Political Studies Center, says that the greater the abstention rate, the more the gap will narrow between Macron and Le Pen, and called it a real risk for the incumbent president. As we've been reporting, both Macron and Marine Le Pen have different visions for France, and we will decode what each of them will mean for France's future. Currently, the biggest issues of the polls include France's economy, immigration policies, the country's security, and of course, the war in Ukraine. The first issue in focus is the cost of living. Marine Le Pen has promised a horde of measures. She says she will scrap the income tax for those under 30, raise wages and reduce the VAT on fuel. It is an issue that she has aggressively campaigned on. As for Macron, he says the government has already spent billions on this. The Macron government has capped the energy bills, and the president also wants to increase the wages of teachers. The second issue is that of pensions. Macron wants to raise the pension age from 62 to 65, but his policy has not worked with voters on the left in particular. As for Marine Le Pen, she wants to keep pension age at 62. She also wants to raise the minimum state pension, but wants to keep it lower than what Macron intends to. The other major issue in these elections is immigration and security. Le Pen wants a referendum on immigration. She plans for strict rules on who can enter France or become French. Marine Le Pen wants French nationals to be given housing and social services ahead of those who have migrated to France. Macron, on the other hand, is focusing on security. He plans to free up the police in particular from administrative tasks and double the number of police officials on the streets by 2030. The other major issue is the future of Europe at large. Emmanuel Macron, after all, called this election a referendum for Europe. He says that Europe protects France from the war and other crises, especially after Merkel's exit from politics. Macron has now played a decisive role within the bloc, leading the European Union while a war is raging at its doorstep. Le Pen, on the other hand, has come far from her original plan to leave the European Union. However, many believe that her ultimate plan is this. France's Macron has also cast himself as the last defense against the far right. As for the role of France in NATO and the war in Ukraine, Macron has played a decisive role in this crisis. He has led the peace talks, talked to both the sides, and called for diplomacy. He has worked, and this has worked in his favor initially, during the opinion polls at least. People needed to see decisive action and leadership during the crisis. And Macron delivered just that. Meanwhile, Marine Le Pen calls the party a protector of French values, but what got her in trouble was her close link to Vladimir Putin. With public opinion being overwhelmingly against Putin, she has since been seeking to distance herself from the Russian president. The last issue that has hardly been talked about, of course, is climate change. Macron wants France to stop using coal and gas, marking a shift to green energy. He has also pledged to build 6 new nuclear power stations. Meanwhile, Marine Le Pen is not known for her green values or views. She even wants to end the subsidies for renewable energy. All this, of course, will play out when it comes to swaying the French voter, and we at WION will continue to track all the results. WION World is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.